My name is Elena. I was 33 years old the day my stepmother told a room full of strangers that I had no claim to the house I grew up in. Welcome back to NonStop Revenge Stories. If you've ever been underestimated, ignored, or betrayed by the people closest to you, this story is for you. Keep your mouth shut, Diane said quietly as the real estate agent arranged paperwork across the conference table. The buyer sat across from us, pretending not to listen. You're embarrassing yourself. I stared at her. My father lived in that house for 30 years. And I was his wife, she replied. The decision has already been made. My stepbrother Ryan sat beside her and shook his head. Just let it go, Elena. I remember feeling strangely calm. Not because I agreed with them, because something about the situation didn't make sense. What none of them knew was that my father had spent years organizing every document he owned. The one thing my family never bothered to ask was why he had always been so protective of a worn blue property binder he kept in his office. At the time, I couldn't explain why that binder kept coming back to my mind. But what happened 3 days later changed everything. My father had married Diane when I was 15. First, things were civil. Then Ryan became the center of everything. Every holiday, every family gathering, every major decision, Ryan was included. I was informed afterward. When my father passed away unexpectedly, I wasn't prepared for how quickly things would change. Less than 2 months later, Diane announced she was selling the house. Not discussing it, not considering alternatives. Selling it. The house wasn't just property to me. It was where my mother had planted roses before she died. It was where my father taught me to ride a bicycle. It was where every important memory of my childhood lived. When I questioned the sale, Diane dismissed me. The house belongs to me now. When I asked to review the estate documents, she refused. When I requested copies, she delayed. When I pushed harder, family members started treating me like the problem. Family comes first, Aunt Melissa told me. This isn't about money. I looked at her. Then why won't anyone show me the paperwork? She didn't answer. That should have been my first clue. A few days after the meeting, I returned to the house one final time. Diane was already packing. Furniture was gone. Boxes filled the hallways. The place felt unfamiliar. I walked into my father's old office. Most of the shelves were empty, but inside a lower cabinet, hidden behind a stack of outdated tax records, I found something. The blue binder. Dust covered the edges. The corners were worn from years of use. I sat on the floor and opened it. Inside were surveys, deeds, mortgage records, tax receipts, and handwritten notes. My father's handwriting covered the margins. At first, everything looked ordinary. Then I noticed something strange. A page numbering sequence jumped from page 23 to page 25. Page 24 was missing. I didn't realize then how important that detail would become. The next morning, I contacted the survey company listed in the binder. Most of the records were old. I didn't expect much, but an employee listened carefully when I explained the missing page. After a long pause, he said something that caught my attention. Property files from that period were archived both physically and digitally. My heart skipped. Meaning, there may still be copies. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope. The company requested time to search their records. Meanwhile, the house sale continued moving forward. Diane acted more confident than ever. Ryan openly mocked my concerns. You always think there's some secret. I said nothing, because I wasn't looking for a secret. I was looking for the truth. A week later, I received a call. The survey company had located archived materials connected to the property. The representative sounded surprised. There appears to be documentation that was never included in the active file. My stomach tightened. What kind of documentation? We prefer to discuss it in person. I wish I could say that was the worst part. It wasn't. The sale closing was scheduled for 3 days later. meaning whatever existed in those records would need to be reviewed quickly. When I met with the surveyor, he placed several documents on a table. Among them was a scanned copy of page 24, the missing page. My hand shook as I read it. Years earlier, after my mother's death, my father had amended ownership arrangements connected to the property. The document referenced a legally recorded protective interest established specifically for me. Not full ownership, but a protected ownership share that required notification, consent, and legal acknowledgement before any sale could occur. My father had anticipated future complications, and he had documented everything. The missing page wasn't just another piece of paper. It was the page that connected every other record in the binder. Without it, Diane's version of events appeared legitimate. With it, the entire sale became questionable. Before we get to the part that changed everything, let me know where you're watching NonStop Revenge Stories from. The surveyor immediately contacted the attorneys handling the transaction. Additional records were requested. County filings were reviewed. Every new document supported the same conclusion. The protective interest existed. It had been properly recorded, and somehow it had disappeared from the working file used during the sale process. The closing meeting went forward anyway. Only now several additional professionals would be attending. The conference room was crowded. Buyers, agents, attorneys, survey professionals, family members. At least 15 people sat around the room. Diane entered looking confident. Ryan followed behind her. Neither seemed concerned. The lead attorney began reviewing final documents. Then the surveyor requested permission to speak. The room grew quiet. He placed a copy of page 24 on the table. Diane frowned. "What is that?" The surveyor calmly explained the discovery. Then he presented archived records, cross-reference filings, ownership documentation, verification reports. One by one, the room became silent. The attorney reviewed the records carefully, then reviewed them again. Finally, he looked toward Diane. "Mrs. Carter, these documents indicate the property cannot legally be sold under the current transaction." Diane's face drained of color. "That's impossible." "It isn't." Ryan leaned forward. "There has to be some mistake." The attorney shook his head. "The records appear valid. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody caused a scene. The evidence spoke for itself." I watched buyers exchange confused glances. Real estate agents quietly flipped through paperwork. Family members suddenly avoid eye contact. For months, I had been treated like an obstacle. Now the room was looking at the documents instead of me. The real surprise came later. As additional reviews continued, it became clear that my father had intentionally structured the arrangement to protect my future interest in the home. Not because he distrusted everyone, because he understood how easily people could be excluded after someone dies. Diane tried explaining herself. She claimed she had misunderstood the records. She insisted she believed she had authority. Maybe some of that was true. Maybe it wasn't. But the truth remained unchanged. The sale stopped immediately. Ownership issues had to be resolved before anything else could happen. Over the following months, relationships shifted. People who had dismissed me became noticeably quieter. Aunt Melissa stopped offering opinions. Ryan stopped making comments. Even family members who never apologized seemed uncomfortable whenever the subject came up. As for me, I focused on honoring my father's wishes. Eventually, a legal agreement was reached. Everything reflected the ownership protections he had created years earlier. The outcome wasn't about winning. It wasn't about revenge. It was about refusing to let the truth disappear simply because it was inconvenient. The blue binder now sits on a shelf in my office. Every time I see it, I think about my father. Not because of the documents, because of what they represented. Preparation, responsibility, and trust. He trusted that one day, if necessary, The truth would be there waiting to be found. He was right. And if this experience taught me anything, it's this. People who underestimate you are often the ones who know you least. The truth eventually speaks for itself.